And a pleasant good day to you guys, sports fans. Thank you for joining us on the PR Man, the Coach Talking Ball, and the BallFather podcast presented by Sports Keto. I'm Reggie Roberts, longtime NFL PR man, and I'm joined by my co-host Mike Smith, who's the winningest coach in Falcons. Coach, good morning. How you doing, man?
I'm great, Reg. I'm great. Had a great Thanksgiving. I mean, how can you not like Thanksgiving with all the ball that was played in the NFL and in college football this weekend? We got our fill.
I tell you what, I was sitting there thinking, you watching Thanksgiving and great, like you mentioned, the great college games and, what Michigan did. Now that they're the buzz of college football right now. But just to go back to Thanksgiving Day, you think, okay, well, Bills improved to 8-3, winning twice at Ford Field in 5 days, which is impressive in and of itself, based on all the travel things and all the stuff they had to deal with. And then, the Cowboys, slow start. They came back, they beat the Giants, took care of business there. And then you're thinking, okay, well, it can't get any better. Well, the Vikings, who got completely demolished the week before, come back 5 days later and beat a very good Bill Belichick Patriots team in the nightcap. And you're thinking, okay, well, nothing can top that. Nothing will be able to top. And then the weekend games come. I mean, it had everything this weekend. We had controversial games, we had signature games, we had guys playing great on defense, we had great plays on offense. I mean, I tell you what, if the remaining 6 games of the 2022 season are as good as the first 12 have been, I mean, we are in for one hell of a finish. And the playoffs are going to be out. It's going to be unbelievable, Mike.
It is, Reg. And the Thanksgiving Day, it's a football fan's favorite day of the year. It really is. We haven't talked about the Lions and probably given them as much credit this year. They were trying to win their 4th game in a row, and they hadn't done that since what? I've had to look it up, and it's 2016, but I thought it was 1996. The way that they play, and they've played really good ball. They beat the Packers, the Bears, and the Giants, and those aren't signature wins, but those are beating the Giants is a good one. They've played better, especially on defense. Even though they're still 32nd in the league, they've done it. But I'll tell you, they did struggle to stop Josh Allen in that 4th quarter. The cream rose to the crop. He went 10 for 14 and scored 2 touchdowns and brought him back. But I tell you what, there was a lot of things that we're going to talk about, and it starts with this first ball game. There was some head scratching, clock management and play selection by the Detroit team, and at the end of the game, they could have let that if they did a better job and they managed it properly, they would have been able to take that game to overtime. And being the underdog, hey, that's what you want to do. You don't want to give Josh Allen the ball with 30 seconds to go. I thought it was really a tough thing for Detroit because they did mismanage it and they could have got that thing into overtime. Not saying they would have won, but they would have got it into overtime. And my thoughts for the Bills right now is they got a big injury issue, as you well know. Von Miller, he's got some type of confirmed MRI issue with his knee, and missing him's going to be tough. That's a tough one. And then, Reg, the next week or the next game, you go right to the next game, and it's the Cowboys and the Giants. And I have to tell you, it was a hell of a game. There was a lot at stake. You guys I thought it was one of the better games, but I was really surprised. I don't know if you were, but I was really surprised how the Giants played in the 4th quarter. They had no sense of urgency. Was it me?
No.
Me and my stomach with the big turkey, with the big turkey dressing in there, that I just felt like it was, it was slow. They were down by 14 and they didn't go to their no huddle. I promise you, the Giant fans, they're asking that question. They're asking that question. The Cowboys are coming into really good form, but I was really concerned about the way that the Giants went about the last 5 minutes of that game. They almost like they tucked it in and, they were done. They wanted to go get turkey dinner. I don't know what your thoughts were. But did you think that was strange?
I I completely spot on agree with you. I didn't think they had any sense of urgency, and they, when they sort of ran all season. If you look at the numbers, when they go to their kind of quick game, they're sort of 2-minute offense. When when the defense can't substitute and can't get guys in and out. They get the matchups that can't get the matchups that they want. They're pretty effective. They're really good at it. You got an all-world running back in Saquon. You got 2 pretty decent receivers. Quarterback, when he's not throwing it to the other teams, pretty good too. I mean, it's just a head scratcher because Dayball's an offensive coach. You're thinking, what happened? You've been doing that all year. You've been going to your quick game at very different parts of the ball game that sort of sparked your offense to get them going a little bit. And the fact that they didn't do that was a little bit surprising. I can surprise you. I promise you. The WFAN radio has been red hot this week.
I just felt that there was no sense of urgency, and then you get the Vikings and the Pats, and I tell you, the Vikings and the Pats is a good one to have watched because it was a great bounce back game after the 40-3 beat down by the Cowboys the week before, and they're much, sometimes when you don't play well, the quarterback is much aligned, Kirk Cousins. This guy I think he's an upper echelon, top third quarterback in the NFL. I don't know about you, Reg, but I think he takes a lot of beef. And I think it's because of what happened the last couple of years with what they did offensively. And I think it was more schematically and what the head coach wanted his team to look like and what Kirk Cousins can do as a quarterback. He's free throwing now with the new head coach up there. He looks like a different guy, in my opinion.
He completely looks like a different guy. I always thought when Kirk was playing under Coach Zimmer that he was more of the game manager. He looked like a game manager. He was like you said, playing what the coach wanted to do. Strength of the team was defense. Mike was defensive-minded coach. Run the ball, play defense was kind of what he wanted to do. But he doesn't look like that in this offense. He's freewheeling. He's throwing it down the field. He's got Justin Jefferson catching that ball. He's got Dalvin Cook catching it out of the backfield. I mean, he's throwing it to that big tight end that I never can pronounce his name. He looks like a real guy throwing it 350, 370, 360. I mean, he's throwing it at a high clip and he's looking really, really good.
Yeah, he is. He's taken a lot of heat throughout his career. He just happened to fall in one of the cycles where he was the highest paid quarterback for that year. So the expectations were so high. I think he's got the Vikings playing really strong football on the offensive side. But let's get back to the game, though. The game was an interesting game. The Patriots, though, they had some miscues on special teams that were very costly. They gave up that dang long run to Kene Wangu. They got a good reason to be picked up there in New England because that was a block in the back.
It was. It was.
But those things happen, Reg. You just you got to move on. But they also had some other things on the special team side. They had a running into the kicker. And they just surprised me that the Patriots looked so bad in certain areas of the game, and they also had the replay, the replay official overturned that touchdown pass in the third quarter as well. And that was a very, very controversial call. They brought on Walt Anderson. He said after the game that, he didn't survive the ground. I don't know about surviving the ground in the end zone. That's just my take on it. But, you mentioned Justin Jefferson. We got to give him his due for what he did on Thanksgiving. He shattered the NFL record that was held by a Viking, Randy Moss, one of the greatest Hall of Famer. But he went on to break the record for the most yards in 3 seasons. Moss held the record. I think it was like 4,100, 4,163. Yep. And he did his, in his first 48 games. Jefferson broke that record in 44 games. And I know that the game's changed, but you got to give him his due. And Kirk Cousins, by the way, is the guy that's throwing the ball to him. So,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, it's unbelievable.
how can you have a guy breaking a record, catching the ball, and have your quarterback taking some grief throughout the season that he's not, that he's not the answer, and he's got him playing outstanding ball, the second best record in the NFC.
How my thing is always check in on the building and find out what kind of guys are in the building. If you ask anybody in Mankato, Minnesota, what Kirk Cousins is like, people are in that building who I know, they say, let me just tell you, first of all, he's, I don't know if you know this, he's the son of a preacher. His dad's a preacher here in Central Florida. His dad runs as a church here in Central Florida. I've actually been to the church. His dad's a preacher. He's on TV and stuff, and he's a very calm, very good, very, very spiritual man, obviously, since he's a preacher. But Kurt's sort of the same way, real big family, got a family, wife, kids. They say how he is on the field, in the huddle, he's like that in the building. It's very nice, everybody in the building, very professional with everybody in the building. And you root for guys like that. I root for guys like that. I don't like guys who are one way, and treat people who work in the office another way. But they say really good things about it. Here's the second thing I'll say about the Vikings and why I like them. I think the coach, is got the right personality, the right temper, because the way they're playing on offense, they got a lot of stuff going. They can beat you in a lot of different ways. They can slow it down. They can pound you with Dalvin Cook. They can throw it to Jefferson. They can throw it to the tight end. And defensively, and here's the other part I want to just weigh in on this, Mike. I saw a lot of bad special teams play all over the league this past weekend. I don't know if it was just guys dropping balls, blocks in the back, and maybe the numbers aren't up, but I saw a lot of very bad special teams play all weekend. And that's something I'm
over. That way, I haven't seen the numbers, but that's a good point. It was, you saw drop punts, guys dropping punts, fake punts and situations. We'll talk about when in the Rams game, but that shouldn't have happened. No,
not this late in the year. That shouldn't be happening this late in the year. We're in week. We just put a bow on week 12. We got guys dropping balls. We got guys, ineligible downfield. We got guys now who don't know the rules. I mean, that stuff will get your butt beat, and the difference between losing on a special teams play, that could be the difference between getting one of those first buys, 1 and 2, as opposed to being home and getting ready to prepare it and not having to play the first week. That makes a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're down to the time of the season where one play can mean you're in or you're out. One or two plays can mean you're playing at home or playing on the road. And as you know, if you're playing outdoors, there's some teams that are mutters and that have better options. And if you're not a mutter and something happens, on special teams, you could be sent to Siberia. Although I don't know that I don't think anybody's going to be going to Siberia this year the way that the Packers are playing.
No.
And I'm sure we're going to get to that here in a minute.
We'll get to that. We're going to get to that. But I tell you, it was great. It was really, really great. I'm a Vikings guy. I'm a pro Vikings guy, and I like their offense, and I like the way Cousins is playing. The team, I like Buffalo, but you're right. They've got that injury situation. We got to keep our eye on that. And then the Giants. The thing with the Giants with the whole offense, with what they were doing on offense, especially late in that game. We'll keep our eye on that. I tell you what, now just moving along to Sunday, and you brought this to my attention. We were texting back and forth the other day. You brought this to my attention. I went back and looked at that Jacksonville-Baltimore game. I'm gonna just say this to you, and I don't know if you thought this. I was a Trevor Lawrence guy when he came out of Clemson. I thought he had a lot of confidence. Thought he had a lot of poise. He ain't got. I don't know if he's got a Dan Marino arm, but his arm's good enough. I mean, it's big enough. He looked like a real dude back there in that game, especially late in that game. He set that back foot and throwing. He looked like a real dude, Mike, for real.
Yeah, he is. I mean, first pick in the draft. I think he's really starting to come into his own with Doug Peterson. Doug's a quarterback whisperer, former, backup quarter for most of his career in the NFL. And they're doing some really good things. And I had an opportunity to watch that last drive. And, if you're a Jacksonville Jaguar fan, you've got to be excited about the future. It was, it was a big win. And if you're a Baltimore Raven, you got to be concerned because there's some trends going on there. And Baltimore's a good football team, one of the better in the league, but there's some chinks in the armor. There's no doubt about it. And I'm sure we'll get to that when we start talking about those games individually.
Living here in Central Florida, since, a lot of people, we're kind of like, I had a guy tell me the other day, he called it the vortex. He says, Tampa's just a little bit too far to go to see the Bucs. And he's not a real Bucs fan. And they say, well, in Miami's way too far to go. Okay. And then, but the guy said the vortex is, if the Jaguars ever got good enough, it's close enough to Palm Coast and to Ormond Beach where you could kind of you'd be there and you could be there in an hour. You could be there to see them in an hour. I've always liked that whole area because I've had business down there and stuff to do down there, friends down there. I tell you what, I'd go down there to see those guys play. If they got to look, then you're right. They're going to get better. Coach Peterson knows what he's doing. Not only is Coach Peterson a quarterback whisperer, he's got two other great qualities about him, just so that you're aware. He is a Louisiana guy, like yours truly.
Yeah.
He is.
He is a Louisiana through and through.
And he's a ULM guy, like yours truly is. So we got that going. It was Mike. It looked like he had that game went on. As it went on, his confidence got bigger and bigger, and more importantly, how guys were rallying around him. And that was his huddle. He's getting guys together. He's pointing out, getting guys reshifted, recalibrated. I mean, I'm thinking, and the fans were into it. I mean, the crowd got into it late. I mean, it was a really, really interesting game, and it was, Baltimore's a good team. They're going to be in the playoffs, and we don't know what happens in the last 6 games, but I tell you what, that was a lot of fun to watch those guys come back and beat that and to score on that 2-point conversion for the final 28-27 score. That was impressive.
Yeah, well, for them to score, or the way that it all went down, Reg, they score with 14 seconds to go, and it was a perfectly executed 2-minute drive. Not like some of the other ones that I saw in the weekend games, but and then they go for the 2-point conversion, and I think there were 2 teams that did it. And there's some things that were really cool about that decision. He basically told his team that I've got confidence in you. And there's a low probability that they'll go to the playoffs this year. They're not mathematically out of it, but this could go a long way to turning around the fortunes of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And it's been a long time since Jack Del Rio was the head coach. But here's an interesting statistic, and there were a bunch of them this year. I don't know how these people come up with these statistics, but I saw this. Since 2000, the Jags are 0-162 when they're down by 7 points or more in the final 2 minutes.
Wow.
So they've not had a comeback. So it's been since 2000, 0-162. That just blew my mind when I saw that. But hey, give props to the Jags. Let's talk about the Ravens. The Ravens defense, they did not look good at all on that last drive. I'm telling you, they couldn't get a stop against a dead average, Jaguars offense. They're starting to improve, but they're dead average. They're not the Chiefs. They're not the Vikings. The coverage in the secondary was super, super conservative. It was like they were playing against a rookie quarterback. Well, this guy looked like an all-pro. He cut him up. They did. But the offense for the Ravens this season, they got the red zone flu. And it's not the 24-hour flu. It's not a week it's not the week flu. This thing's lasted all season long. They were 2 for 5 on their trips into the red zone, Reg. It was crazy.
That ain't good enough.
Yeah, that's not good enough. And they almost won the ball game because they got a kicker that can kick it from 62. You that wind in Jacksonville, spending 5 years in Jacksonville, it's not a great place for field goal kickers. It's on the St. Johns River and it swirls. But shoot, he almost made that 62-yarder. But let me tell you something that's really concerning about the Ravens. All 4 of their losses have they've had double-digit leads in the ball game. So they have lost 4 games when they've been leading by 10 or more points. That ain't good, man.
No, not
that
this
ain't good.
No.
So, that gives their opponents a lot of confidence to know, hey, man, these guys can't hold a lead. Let's bring it back. And I haven't studied enough to know, what is it they get too conservative on their defensive calls. I haven't studied enough, but that's a trend that going into the playoffs, I wouldn't want to be having over my head. That's for sure as a head coach. So, with the Ravens loss, they're now tied with the Bengals. They brought the Bengals right back into it. Nobody thought the Jaguars were going to win. And the Ravens, though, I still think they're in the driver's seat because they've only got 1 game against a team with the winning record. And that is the Bengals. And by the way, they play the Bengals in Week 18. That could be a big, big game for all the dang reasons that happen in Week 18. Yeah. It could be playoffs, but it was a fun game to watch. It really was, and I was proud of a young quarterback to get his first quote signature win.
That was big.
A really good football team.
Mike, let me ask you this. As coaches, you keep track of everything. I know you keep, or you got somebody on your staff keeps track of stuff. When you were coaching, when you just mentioned something, the Ravens, they've lost double-digit. They've had 4 double-digit leads, and they've lost.
Evaporate. Just boom. Evaporate, and they lose.
Do you when you're game? Let's say you play those guys and you get them in the playoffs. Is that something that you put on your big board the first meeting?
Yeah. Absolutely. It'd be, we talked about, the must. We got to say, hey, we just got to stay close with these guys. Worst case scenario, we got to stay close. We're within 14, 17. It's happened 4 times, guys. They haven't been able to finish. They don't have that I'd say they don't have that killer instinct to put you away when they're up by 2 scores. Usually, 2 scores, man. You want to step on their throat when you have them down 2 scores. I'm sure Coach Harbaugh and the staff, they're looking at the different things that have happened in those games and see if there's some type of, common thread.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know what? They got to get that fixed. This is late in the season. That's a problem. They got to get that fixed.
Absolutely. The Raven fans, they'll be wanting answers. And
they will be.
With Harbaugh, we'll get it figured out.
You're on the PR Man, the Coach Talking Ball on the BallFather podcast presented by Sports Keto with Reggie Robertson, the Coach Mike Smith. Coach, the AFC playoff picture and the NFC playoff picture are all starting to come in focus a little bit now. Right now, if the season ended today, you got Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Tennessee, New York Jets, the Miami Dolphins make the playoffs for the AFC. And on the NFC side, you have the Eagles, Cowboys, Tampa Bay, New York Giants, San Francisco 49ers, Washington Redskins, and Minnesota Vikings. So I hate to, again, because I know I'm going to have to buy dinner here in a couple of 6 weeks, and I know I'm going to have to. But you said something a couple of weeks ago that you brought to my attention about the one division, all 4 teams making the playoffs. If the season ended today, everybody from the NFC East would be in the playoffs, which is insane. When you first said that to me, I'm thinking that can't happen. But it looks like as well as Washington is playing, the Giants will, they don't have to, as soon as they get their situation going on offense, get their offense back going, they'll be okay. But it looks like that's going to happen. It really does look like that could happen.
Well, I think it can happen. I don't know, there's so many moving parts and who's playing who the last 2 weeks and how those games fall. But it's not out of the realm of possibility. And believe it or not, the AFC East, they have the same situation. It's a possibility on the AFC East. If it could happen today, the Bengals would be in, and one of the teams in the AFC, the Patriots, would be out. But it could happen. I just think the Bengals on the AFC side have a better shot because of the schedule that they have.
Right.
And that would be a first. And this has been a season of a lot of firsts. And I think because we've gone to a 17-game schedule, this is a possibility now. And, both East divisions in both the AFC and the NFC are playing really good football. They don't have, a surefire one team that's going to win. They're very, very competitive from 1 to 4. And when you're competitive from 1 to 4 and the other divisions stink, you got a chance to friggin' get all 4 of you in the playoffs. And that would just be amazing if that happened.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, as you look at it right now, the East, the NFC has obviously the best chance based on how it's stacked up right now. But you're right. It could change very, very quickly in the other division. A couple of teams lose. Cincinnati drops a game. You never know. But you're right. Three of the teams are in now, and the Patriots are just right on the outside.
Yeah. And I would never ever count the Patriots out.
No.
Yeah, not at all. And and I was remiss to say, when we were talking earlier about the Patriots game, Mac Jones had the best game of his career in that defeat. He was over 300 yards. He was cutting and spinning it. So that's a good sign for the Patriots moving forward.
This year's nominee for the most disappointing team in the AFC, I don't even think it's close. There are a couple of nominees, but I think it's the Broncos. Got to be. I mean, they had all this hype in the offseason about they're going to get Russell Wilson. They're going to rebuild the team, get parts. Got a whole new ownership group. The guy who's the Sam Walton's son, who owns Walmart, is now the owner of the Broncos. And there was all this hype and excitement about the Broncos are going to be back. They're going to spend money. They're going to get players. And they've just been not very good. They've been no fun to watch. They've made a lot of mistakes. The play calling has been suspect. The defense hasn't been very good. The special teams has been really, really bad. I mean, and everybody wants to lay it at Russell's feet, which I think is a mistake. There's 53 guys on that roster. It's not all Russell Wilson's fault. There's plenty of blame to go around in Dove Valley. I think a lot of it starts with the guy whose name's on the door of the head coach's office, and that Nathaniel Hackett. Just, what's gone wrong there, Coach? What do you think it is, and how do you see it? I mean, obviously, they're talking about, he gave with the play calling and all that stuff. How do you fix that whole mess in Denver? How do you fix that?
Well, Reggie, let's first step back a little bit and talk about what's happened. And it's been a difficult year, but I will say this: the Broncos are hard to watch.
Yes, they are.
They're hard to watch. It has not been pretty, and to say that Nathaniel Hackett has been on the hot seat is probably the biggest understatement of the whole year. This thing started back well before last year ended. Everybody knew that there was going to be new ownership,
right?
The general manager, George Patton, he made this big off-season acquisition and gave up a lot of draft capital to do it. And he acquired Russell Wilson from Seattle. And look, when that trade was made, I was going, gosh, that was a lot to give up. And the Seahawks, they knew that. Well, maybe they knew Wilson was in decline, because he surely doesn't look like the same player in the Denver Broncos offense, and this year is it's been crazy because, they were going through the process of trying to sell a team, and, that doesn't happen on the NFL calendar. It doesn't coincide. Ideally you would have loved to have a change of venue or change of ownership, before they had to make these decisions about hiring a coach, because really the new ownership had nothing to do, from what I understand, with the hiring of the new coach. And that's tough. They've inherited the management team of Patton and Hackett. And it's not out of the question in my mind that this could be what I call a one and done.
I think it's completely.
And there's been a lot more one and dones and two and outs over the last 6 or 7 years. You don't, as a head coach, you're not guaranteed 3 years. You may be only guaranteed, and you're not guaranteed 1 year, because I can give you example after example of coaches in the last 10 years that have been one and dones or two and outs. If the closing of the sale from the Bolin family and to the Walton family coincide with the calendar of hiring coaches, I think it would be a whole different regime in there in Denver. The new owners, the Walton family, they want to put their name and they want to bring their people in, and it's a good possibility that it could happen after the season. At worst, there's going to be massive changes in the way that they're doing things there in Dove Valley, because the Broncos, with the quarterback that they acquired, they have not gotten the bang for their buck. That's for sure.
It's embarrassing. I mean, I can remember, even working in the league when I worked at the league office in the early '90s. Every now and again there'd be an outlier where an NFC guy would go to an AFC game and vice versa. And I spent some time up there. My brother lived up there, and I'd go up there. The Broncos were always vertical passing game. They could always run the ball. Really, really good on special teams. They're always, with Elway and Vance Johnson and all those guys. They could, the Rod Smith, the long striding receiver. They could always run the ball. They were really, really good at throwing it around. Now it's like I was so excited for the hype, because you heard all the hype, and they got Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson going out there and doing his thing. They've looked organized. They've looked off schedule. It's not the same team. And you're right. I think the owner, especially when you have put that much, I think it wound up being a $5.9 or $6.5 billion transaction. When you put that much money in, you want your own people. You want to have buy-in. You want to be part of the process. And I think for public relations' sake, they'll play the year out. He doesn't have to do anything. He's a billionaire. He spent $6 billion on this. And I think the other day I read, I think he's got $48 billion still.
Yeah, he's one of the 10 richest men in the world.
So I don't think it'll really bother him if they got to blow out Patton and they got to blow out their coach. They'll just to say they're going to go get their own guys, and I think that'll happen. I think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, switching to the most disappointing team in the NFC. We'll be quick on this one. We'll be brief. It's my team. It's the Saints. You talked about hard to watch. Okay.
Well, especially for you, bud. Especially for you.
It was hard to watch on Sunday. Okay. Drew Brees is gone. He ain't coming back. 4 years from now, he'll be getting the gold coat. Sean Payton, he's gone. Depending on some transactions got to go on with New Orleans, with the Saints, they'll determine whether or not he coaches next year. Because if he decides to coach next year, as you and I have discussed, there's going to be compensation. And the Saints have to approve that compensation. Correct? They've got to approve that compensation. The Saints have shown no consistency on the offensive side of the ball. They were blank on the scoreboard for the first time since 2002. And you want to know how bad it was? I'll tell you how bad it was, okay? In 53 snaps against the 49ers, the Saints managed just one play to gain more than 20 yards for the entire game. Name me a time when we played the Saints when their offense performed putridly. They never did. Okay, it's not just limited to the offensive side. On defense, the Saints have failed to force a turnover in 3 straight games and 4 of their last 5. That doesn't sound like Saints football to me. So, but the Saints are leading the NFL in all the dubious categories. They lead the NFL with 19 false starts, 3 snap ins. Those kids, head coaches hate that. They hate that.
Oh yeah.
Okay? They
blood pressure going.
Get your blood pressure going. Okay. They lead the league in turnovers. Okay, and they're also first in turnover, last in turnover margin, -12. That doesn't bode for winning. That's losing football. You can't win like that. So let me ask you this, Mike. With everything going on there, you got and someone told me this too this weekend. What do you think the conversations are going on in New Orleans? I mean, what's happening in that building? I mean, proud team. But what do you think those conversations are going on in that building about this? How poorly that team's being coached right now?
Well, I certainly hope that the Saints administration and the fan base will be patient with Coach Dennis Allen. I mean, he's been there a long time. He's been a very successful defensive coordinator. He's been on that staff. This is a team that's in transition too. Who knows in 3 years if Gail Benson's going to sell the Saints. That's a possibility. That may happen in the next couple of years, and that this transition from Breeze to Peyton, that era of the Breeze and Peyton era, it was so ultra successful. They won a Super Bowl. Give them their props. I got to give them their props. They won a Super Bowl. Yes, and they were always in the conversation for the most part when Sean and Drew were there, in the conversation to be in the playoffs every year. But Sean Payton is not with the Saints because they don't have a quarterback.
That's correct.
You know what I'm saying? They don't have a quarterback. No disrespect to the two players that are there, but they're quarterback deficient. And when you're quarterback deficient, you got no chance in this league. And that's got to be addressed first and foremost. And Mickey Lomas knows how to rebuild a team. But he's never had to do it and rebuild it with having to put a quarterback and plug a quarterback in. That's been the big issue. Reg, I know it's killing you this season, the Saints season. No telling what's going to happen in terms of whether there's going to be a coaching change, but I hope we don't have 2 one and dones in the same season, because it's not a good look. And I hope that as I said earlier, I hope the fan base and the administration, the people that are making the decisions, support that staff. And they're playing in the lowly NFC South right now. It's not pretty.
No.
It's not pretty football. And who knows? They could go on a run, Reg. They're not mathematically out of it. And if there's anybody that's in last place right now in their division that has the best chance to win their division, it would have to be the New Orleans Saints, because the 3 teams above them, they're not very good either.
Yeah.
So there's hope, Reg. There's hope for the New Orleans Saints.
Hey, I'm keeping hope alive. We're gonna keep it alive.
Yeah, bro.
Keep it alive. Well, let's talk about somebody who doesn't have any problems scoring points, and somebody who's playing pretty well. They're actually not. They had some issues on special teams. So you're talking about the 9-2 Chiefs. Just 6 games left. Some key trends are starting to establish themselves, Mike. One is the Chiefs can find a whole bunch of different ways to beat you. They can win the close ones. They can win the track meets, and defensively, they've got enough personnel to keep the opponent's offense on the sidelines long enough to for their offense to get a lead and to choke you out. The overall record of Kansas City's final 6 opponents, Mike, is 24, 41, and 1, including 2 games against the aforementioned 3-8 Broncos, 1 game against the Houston Texans, who are 1-9-1, and they have a matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders, who are 4-7. The only 2 teams with winning records are Cincinnati this weekend and Seattle later down the road. Seattle 6-5. So let me ask you this: have we seen a big enough sample size to determine that KC is the best team in the AFC? Are we all in agreement? I think we're all in agreement there.
Reggie, absolutely. They're rolling, and the way that the schedule plays out for them for the rest of the season, on paper, they're going to be the number 1 seed in the in the AFC.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't want to talk about, we've talked about the Chiefs and, for the last few weeks. I really want to talk about the Rams, the team that they beat this week. And let me tell you, the Chiefs, let me finish up about the Chiefs. They continue to find ways to win. And like you said, they're getting contributions throughout their roster. It's not the same 5 guys that are making plays. It's a bunch. But, this win this past week was not very pretty. And if you listen to Patrick Mahomes and some of the other leaders on the team talk about the game, they weren't happy with that win. I mean, it was ugly. I mean, what are they doing? Keep putting that guy back there to catch punts. He's had 3 muffed punts. I don't understand that. They need to get on and get someone else back there. And then, on special teams, they had the fake punt, and the quarterback that the Rams were playing with, he really struggled. You had to know that, know that we're going to do something. And Joe DeCamillis, the special teams coordinator, who was with the Falcons and who worked with me in Jacksonville, he's going to get a fake on you if you show that you're not ready for it. And they weren't ready for it. I mean, that was an unbelievable. But let's talk about the Rams, okay? Okay, it's not pretty. Do you agree?
Super Bowl hangover.
Now, I don't know if it's Super Bowl hangover. That's part of it, but there's a bunch of other things that the Rams have talked about doing, and it won them a championship, but I don't know about long-term success. So, they've got no chance of making the playoffs. I mean, they may still be mathematically, it's too early in the season, but they got no chance. They've struggled all season long to stay healthy. They may be shutting down and probably should shut down Matthew Stafford for the season. I believe he's one confirmed concussion, a second one that they're not confirming, but he was in concussion protocol, but they say it's not a surefire concussion. So that it leaves you to think, who knows what's going on. And then the news they get yesterday, Aaron Donald going to miss some time. Your two big best players. And then they've got wide receivers, offensive line issues. They're not very good. It's been a lost season, and now they're playing with their third string quarterback, Bryce Perkins. Don't know. I never heard of him, to be quite frank. Yeah. That doesn't mean anything. But the Rams, they're dealing with salary cap and depth issues. And it was their philosophy of trading draft picks to acquire expensive veterans instead of building through the draft. And what it's shown is that this is not sustainable. We all remember Les Snead, his comment at the parade, Super Bowl parade, which that's the funnest time and the greatest experience. I've done it, riding on a float in downtown Baltimore, winning the 2000 Super Bowl. But he said, F them picks. You remember that? We'll use them to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
And he did. He did. But is it sustainable? That's the big question. The model in the NFL. I mean, if you've gone out and spent a lot of your draft capital on bringing in big-time free agents, you might be able to keep them for a year or two. But what is it going to do to the back end of your roster? You got, you're not going to be able to pay those middle guys. Well, you're going to have a bunch of high-paid guys and a bunch of low-paid guys, and that ain't a good thing in management of the cap for the long term. Now, hey, granted, you might say, hey, we're going to take a swing for the Super Bowl and hit a home run, and they did for 1 year, but it's a whole different year. It is tough to see the product that they have got to put on the field right now because of all the injuries to a number of their top name players, and they don't have the depth.
I think that's an interesting argument, Mike. I think that because it's the whole philosophy of head coach's philosophy and how he thinks the team should be constructed and built, and then the personnel staff. It's a very fine line that if you two guys aren't seeing it through the same or aren't on the same, seeing it from the same hymnal. Whereas one guy would say, well, hey, you know what, Mike, let's go out and get this guy. This guy makes us better here. This guy makes us. You can make your argument stand up however way you want to, depending on what you're trying to get. You and I could sit down and talk about. I could say, Mike, I think this, and this, and then you could defend your division by saying, Reg, I see it this way for this, and this. But when you start taking draft picks out of our future for mortgaging them for 1 year, you're not gonna like. You may win the Super Bowl, you may get there, but you're not gonna like what your team looks like the next year,
or year 3 and year 4.
Or year 4. You're not gonna like.
No, in this model that the Rams are are going through right now and what they're using, it won them a Super Bowl. The people of LA are super excited, but they've got to also realize that it's showing up that it's not for long-term success. And again, injuries are a factor and take away the chances for you to win when your top players aren't there. And that could happen at any time and with any model. If you were, building through the draft and all that, you could still get guys injured. Injuries are going to happen, but you've got to be prepared for injuries and make sure that you have the best depth that you can possibly have within the constraints that you have with the salary cap. We don't have unlimited funds when you're running a team. There's a salary cap, and I know that they're having to make some decisions and move some parts based on how much are we paying this guy and how much is it going to cost us to bring him in just to put guys on the field right now. They're a shell of themselves right now, and it's tough to watch. It really is, because they were so hot last year. They were, head and shoulders above 30 of the teams. There was the Chiefs and them, in my opinion, those are the two top teams. But it's tough to watch, but that's the NFL, and we get to talk about it. Fans get to talk about it, and I don't know that all the fans understand all the nuances that go on about building a roster, and there's different philosophies of how people try to do it, and they both work. It's just a matter of how long do they work for.
Your Honor, the PR man and the coach talking ball on the BallFather podcast presented by Sportskeeda. Mike, you know what? It's an age-old question. I mean, but I fall in the same camp that you're in. I want to win. I want to win every year. I don't want to just take a run and maybe get there and then take 3 steps back. I don't want to do that.
Well, let me ask you this, Reg, though. What if you go and do you want to go and be good for 6 or 7 years? And then all of a sudden you get a chance to go and win a Super Bowl in 1 year, and then you're bad for 3 or 4. But if you're just good for 6 or 7, you never know, man. You just don't know if you're ever going to get another chance. You might have one chance to get into the Super Bowl in those 6 or 7, and it doesn't happen, and you don't win. Or do you just say, hey, we're going all in. I'm pushing all the chips in. I like my number. I'm pushing it all in, and let's go win a Super Bowl. The Rams fans last year, they loved it. I don't know what they feel about it this year.
I know they don't like it this year. I know this. More people are involved in that conversation. I mean, that's an organizational conversation that the owner's probably involved in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. How are we going to build our team?
How are we going to build? And that's it. And there's probably Venn diagrams and charts. Lunch is brought in. I mean, we're going to be here until we kind of get to a consensus as to how we're going to do this. And I get that. Yeah. I get that. But I think most owners, and I don't know this to be true, but I worked in the league long enough to know that owners aren't happy when they're out of the late season discussion. I had that conversation with Mr. Blank several times, and I know you had it. Okay. Someone told me once that he would be at his house sometimes, and he would, he turned the TV up when he had people over at the house or he's entertaining, and they would, the talking heads would be talking about, and he'd see the Falcons at the very top of the playoff chart or 1 or 2. I mean, we were at or near the top 86, 87% of the time when you were the head coach. We were always in the late season discussion till we weren't. But I never liked it because I knew how hard it was for me and my team when we weren't part of it, because there was all other stuff coming from his office that he'd want, charts and graphs, all sort of traffic stuff he'd be looking for. It makes for a bad building when it's November and you're 3-9.
Oh, it's not fun.
Yeah, it's a bad building. It's no one. Everybody's on edge. Everybody's, it's tough. Whereas now, I can remember going to work days when we're 10-2 and 12-2 or whatever we were. I mean, NFL days are long days to start with, but when you know that we're 10-1 or we're 9-3 or whatever the hell it is, and we got a chance to go 10-3 or whatever. I mean, everybody's working for it, and it's exciting. But you don't want to go 10-1, and the next year you're 1-10, the next year you're 2-8. I mean, that's no fun at all.
Yeah, I agree, Reg. No,
the systematic, sustainable way to build.
Yeah, there's different. There's a bunch of different philosophies, and that's what makes it so interesting. And Reg. So I know we're talking about the downtrotting Rams right now, but what we need to talk about, and I'm going off script here, but what we need to talk about? We need to talk about the Cleveland Browns. Huh? Oh. Come on now. We haven't talked about the Cleveland Browns in a positive way all season long. And how do the Browns beat the Bucks?
I'm gonna tell you how they beat them.
Well,
two words. Nick Chubb.
Well, Nick Chubb was a big part of that. There's no doubt about it. Hey, and he's a stud. And if you watch this game, and I don't know how many people were watching it outside of Cleveland and Tampa and maybe Central, the Orlando, Central Florida area. There's something that happened for the first time in Tom Brady's career. Brady, get this now. He was 218-0 when he was up by 7 or more heading into the last 2 minutes of the game. He's never been beat when he had a 7-point lead with 2 minutes to go in a game. Guess what happened there in Cleveland? The Cleveland Browns scored with 32 seconds left in regulation on a 12-yard touchdown pass. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
32 seconds left. The game looked like it was going to go into overtime. The game looked like it was going to be a tie until the last 19 seconds on a 4-yard run. So they tie it up. The Bucks had a chance to win the game, though, on the final drive in regulation. They took, if I'm not mistaken, control of the ball with 32 seconds remaining from their own 25.
They did.
On first down, they had a 1-yard completion, and the guy didn't get out of bounds. And they had 3 timeouts, 3 of them. They didn't use the timeout that was available. They wasted 13 to 15 seconds to get the next snap, which probably would have given them, if they used their timeouts, they would have had 2 more plays. I just don't get it. They had another completion to Julio Jones. They got to the 48-yard line, and because they didn't use a timeout, they had no more plays to get into field goal range, and they attempt a Hail Mary. And I'm sitting here I'm scratching my head. What were you thinking in terms of your time, your time management in that situation? And I know one thing, your buddies in Tampa that put the ink to paper, they're all over the coaching staff, Brady. What happened? Why did we just basically put our tail between our legs, where we had a chance with the greatest quarterback of all time to get into field goal range?
It's funny you mention that, because it's during the games, my guys who are still covering the Bucks, and those names, Ira's still covering them, JP Peterson, those guys are all there. They're still there. They all text me during the game saying, the one guy's texted me, he said, coaching matters in this league. And we're really beginning to think that our guy is having a tough time doing it. Talking about the head coach.
Yeah, well, this was just a tough game. They give up in regulation. They give up the touchdown. And then how they go to the end of the overtime, in the way that they played that. It was a head scratcher. It was a head scratcher. It really was. But there was a lot of those, not a lot, but there was a handful of those, in the games this weekend.
Yeah, it's the Browns seemingly can't they can't figure it out. They got a really decent coach. I think Stefanski's a really good offensive coach, and the way and his game plan was really good. I mean, they had a nice run of mix and pass. They've got some really good skilled guys on their team. I mean, I think Nick Chubb, like you said, he's as good a running back there as there is in football. But they haven't been consistent enough to be able to put it together. And they're what? I think they're 4-7. I think they are 4-7.
Yeah, no,
but
and maybe it'll change with the quarterback that's coming back off of his suspension for the Browns. It'll be interesting to see how that all goes down. But hey, and let's finish it up. I know we're not going to go through a show and a cutting it up without talking about the Eagles.
We
talk about the Eagles this week and the Packers.
Coach, we've talked a lot about the Eagles and we've talked about the Chiefs, but I just want to get my weekly Jalen Hurts perk in here. He had another great game on Sunday to get the Eagles to the 10th win of the season. Eagles have gotten to the 10-win season, 10 wins for the 5th time in franchise history. They've done it 5 times, and all 4 times they've done pretty well. When they got to 10-1 in 1949 and 2017, they won the NFL championship. Those 2 years. Those 2 times were in 1980 and 2004. They were participants in the Super Bowl. They didn't win. So, he's having he sort of cemented himself as a top MVP candidate. Not sure he'll win. I think the guy in Kansas City, if he keeps going the way he's going, he'll probably win it. But he's established himself through a lot of junk that we've talked about in the past weeks. Gets himself as a pretty reliable quarterback, playing pretty well right now. So as he goes, they go. I think. I mean, they're pretty good on offense, they're pretty good on defense, and they play pretty good special teams. So they will be part of the late season discussion. They are part of the late season discussion. But is it safe to say that they're the best team in the NFC right now that you've seen right now?
I don't think there's any doubt, Reggie, that they're the best team. And I think they'll remain the best team as long as that quarterback stays healthy. He's something. The performance that he put on in that first half this past week against the Packers was unbelievable. Unbelievable. And let me tell you that they're built for an offensive shootout. They can hurt you in a lot of ways, and the shootouts are starting to be more common in the NFL. It's not 3 yards in a cloud of dust. It's not. So they're built, but I do have concerns. The only reason I have a concern is he touches that ball and he doesn't go down. Sometimes he lowers his shoulder and takes some unnecessary hits. And I think as long as he's healthy, they're going to be hard to slow down, and they got to be the favorite in the NFC. People overlook the Eagles' defense, though. They're second in the league in yards allowed. They're first in takeaways and turnover margin, and they're third in sacks. So those to me are some of the top numbers that you got to look at. You got to look at takeaways, you got to look at yards, you got to look at sacks, because sacks are money plays. They really are. And I'll say this, I can say this wholeheartedly and have no doubts. The Eagles, after watching that game, the Eagles are the best team in the NFC, and the Packers are toast. They're done. Okay. Oh. And they're in the oven burnt. They're done. Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers, he had 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in the first half. He was injured. He came into the game with a thumb, and now he's got ribs or oblique. And what happens is, in my opinion, moving forward, because they're toast, they're done. Now's the time to see if Jordan Love is a long-term quarterback in Green Bay. He was drafted to replace Aaron Rodgers 3 years ago, and he's barely seen the field. And it wasn't by design. That's not what that's not how they designed it when they drafted him. And I tell you what, Aaron Rodgers is going to the Hall of Fame. He's a great quarterback. But the last 3 years, it's been drama filled in Green Bay. You would think that that would be something that's happening out in LA with all the people, taking pictures of the stars and all that kind of stuff. Not in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Come on, man. There's a lot going on. And, the Packers defense were torched for 500 yards, 336 or 363 yards on the ground. So, I believe if he is injured, and it sounds like he's been playing hurt, but it sounds like he may have an injury now when you start talking about obliques or ribs, it might be the time. I mean, come on now, you drafted this guy to replace him 3 years ago, and he's barely seen the field. And I know Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to come off the field. He's a highly competitive guy, one of the most competitive guys in the NFL. But I think it's time. Let's see what this Jordan Love can do. I mean, if not, you're going to have no idea, and you're going to have 4 years invested in him. And are you going to make a decision that you're going to pay him, and he hasn't had any type of experience?
So let me ask you this.
Thoughts on it?
I forget the math behind it, but let me ask you this: Was LaFleur part of the group that drafted Jordan Love? Was he there?
I believe so. So.
Wow, that makes it harder, because it makes it, to me, a little bit. What makes it easier for LaFleur, if he part of the drafted him, well then hey, Reggie, you're talking about a generational quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, and I know it's difficult, and he's probably as ultra competitive as any quarterback in the league. I mean, I used to love going to Green Bay or playing the Packers, but even more so in Green Bay. And he was talking smack before the game. Smitty, hey, we're gonna kick you. He was talking smack. Come up to you, we got your ass today. Even when I was a defensive coordinator in Jacksonville, and we went up there and played in December. There's not a more competitive guy in the NFL, and that's why he's been so great. But you just have to understand that there's gonna be football after after everybody's career is over. They're gonna keep playing it, and the organization's got to make a decision. And hopefully for the future of the Packers, they need to find out what Jordan Love can do. And I don't know how they're going to do that over the next 6 weeks. Wow. Another one of those conversations that has to happen with ownership and the general manager and the personnel team. And unfortunately, the guy that's got to deliver the news is the guy that sits in your office.
That's right. It's the head coach that's going to, it's the head coach that's going to be delivering the news. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
And in the NFL and most clubs, is that the head coach basically makes that call, or calls a guy in the office, or has that conversation. But it's a tough conversation, and I know it's going to be, all the talking heads are going to have different opinions. But you've got to look out for the long-term good of the organization when you're the general manager and the head football coach and the owner. And Aaron Rodgers, and there's been some great quarterbacks that have played for the Green Bay Packers through the history. You go back, Bart Starr, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, but there's going to be other great ones, in the future. And right now, nobody knows what Jordan Love can do. So it'll be interesting to see how hurt Rodgers is, and it may be a moot point. If he's got ribs, I think they were doing an MRI. If he's got something that will not allow him to be on the field, then it's, the answer's easy. You put Jordan Love out there and you go play ball.
Yeah, exactly.
But there may be a tough decision coming for the Green Bay Packers in a year where they are not going to be in the conversation to be in the playoffs. So
yeah, but if it's hurt, it's easy for everybody if it goes on that way. If he's hurt and he can't play, but then you got to put the other guy in. Like you said, off we go. So
yeah, we've got some quarterback issues going on in the NFL right now. The Jets, they benched Zach Wilson, and Mike White comes in and he plays extremely well. You got Stafford, Matthew Stafford, that may be being shut down. Not as big a story because they've only won 3 games. They're not 10-2 right now. They're basically out of the picture. And then you have the situation that's going on in Green Bay, and that's why we get a chance to chop this stuff up every week and talk about it. And
it'll be more this week. There's kind of as I read this note, the Eagles are playing Tennessee this week, and AJ Brown, left he didn't get his money. The Titans wouldn't pay him, and they traded him to the Eagles. The Eagles paid him whatever it was, $100 million contract package, whatever it is. So they're going back to the scene of the crime this week. They're playing the Titans.
Oh yeah, that'll be a fun one to watch, and don't think there might be some conversation between he and the head coach of the Titans from the field to the sideline. And Mike might give it right back to him.
Vrabel ain't scared. Vrabel ain't scared.
No, he's not scared. He's not scared. And then Reg got to talk about the Falcons Redskins just real quick. Some interesting things about the Redskins, who are in the conversation of being in the playoffs with the backup quarterback. It's funny to see how they've won 5 of their last 6 games, and they're just playing keep away from the offense. That quarterback is a placeholder, and they are gonna have they're gonna rely on the defense. They're trying to control the clock. They're gonna run the football. They just don't want to lose the game with the quarterback position, in my opinion. And it's a great story, but Coach Rivera and Coach Jack Del Rio, they've come up with a good game plan to minimize the chances of something bad happening on offense. They're doing a great job controlling the clock. Since I can't remember the number exactly, but it was amazing the time of possession that since Heineke's been in the game. That's because they're playing slow ball. They're going to try to slow the game down and keep it tight, not turn it over, not make mistakes, and that works in the regular season. We'll see how it works if they happen to make the playoffs. As you know, when it really gets down to the games that are played in January and late December, the best quarterbacks rise to the top, and that's why it's a quarterback-driven league. Yeah.
Well, I think if you look at their last 6, I mean they play against some really good teams. I think the cream will kind of rise to the top as we sort this thing out as we get a little bit closer to the end of the playoffs. Get to the end of the playoffs, but they're a good story. They've won 5 of 6, but they play some teams within their conference.
If they do it, it's gonna be on the defense, because I'm looking here real quick, and I think that they've got an interesting thing. They're going to play the Redskins, and the Giants are going to play on back-to-back weekends, which I don't think's ever happened in the NFL. They're going to play on consecutive weekends, and then they finish with Cleveland, 49ers, and the Cowboys. So if the Redskins are going to make it, they're going to have to go through a big, tough gauntlet of teams that are, the 49ers and the Cowboys, they're playing great ball right now, and they got to play the Giants twice. So,
that's tough.
Hey, now when you hear that and you see that, you talk about maybe all four going into the playoffs. Maybe it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know I'm sure Vegas would give you odds on it. They probably have odds on it, but I don't, looking at that, looking at those remaining games, that's a tough schedule. But hey, the Redskins are playing tough football,
Yeah. It'll be tough to get through that. I mean, they'll stuff it. I don't see them. They won't. For them to do it, they'd have to probably win 5 or 6 at least. At least 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So I don't see them winning 5 or 6. I don't see them winning 5 or 6. Not with that schedule. Well, look, man, we're gonna close it out, and we'll check out the games and hook up again next week, and go ahead and build Miss Julie's well, and let me know how that goes, and I'll speak to you later in the week, and we'll tee it up again for next week on the BallFather podcast presented by Sportskeeda, man.
All right, Reg.
Have a good one.
Hey, can't wait to see what happens next week.
Look forward to it. Take care, man.
All right.